If you are a beginner teacher and you're just getting started and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. Or maybe you've been teaching for a while and you're like, I just need a little refresher or just get some new ideas. This episode is for you. We're going to talk about different ways and some tips and tricks for building a sequence in your class and helping you lead your classes with confidence. So if that's you and you're like, hey, I need a refresher, or I'm just getting started and I don't even know where to start, this episode is for you. Grab your cup of coffee, grab a chair, pull it up, and let's have this conversation. Welcome to the Jesus Coffee Yoga Podcast. I am Kristen Campbell, your host today. And it is my privilege to get to sit down with you guys and have candid conversations with teachers, leaders, fitness instructors, just like you, who feel called to do this work through the modality of movement and meditation and prayer and help you design your business around your life so that you can truly thrive. So thank you for being here. Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time. Hello. Let us know how you found us and who you are. Say hi. All right. So many of you have reached out to us or mentioned in our group chat or whatever. Somehow I have heard that teachers, especially beginner teachers, but maybe even seasoned teachers who are just like, I feel stuck and I don't know, I need some new thoughts, right? Struggle with structuring a class. And I sat down, I hear you, and I sat down and I started thinking about like, what are some things that I wish I had known or that I have learned along the way of how to lead and build classes and build the sequence part of it and just kind of lead through that class with confidence. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I actually came up with 9 tips for sequence building and leading with confidence. So let's start with some sequencing tips. I learned this somewhere along the way. I feel like Misty, who's on our team, taught me this. And it's essentially setting 3 poses in each kind of portion of your class. So like, let's say you're on your back. We're going to do 3 poses on our back if that's where you're starting. 3 poses in seated. So we've got our cat-cow and our twist and a bend. So that's your 3, right? And then you go to tabletop and you do your 3 postures in tabletop from that tabletop position. 3 standing, go to your balance, then your cool down and your stretches. You're coming back down to your mat. And then maybe back again, maybe go to either tabletop or you come back to seated, or you come back to your back. Okay. And then, of course, Savasana at the end, anything you want to do, like right to get them prepared. 3 different things you can do there. So, personally, and I think this is going to be a yogi's choice or a teacher's choice, I prefer to start and build and then come back down. I've taken classes with other teachers before and it just felt kind of choppy. It was kind of like we were up and then we would come down and do tabletop and then we would come back up and do some standing stuff and then we come back into doing some other things on the floor like seated. And it just felt a little like choppy. Personally, I kind of like to start from the ground up, stay up and then come down. Of course, if I'm teaching like a power flow or something like that, then I will bring them into child's pose or down dog for rest. But for the most part, I kind of like to start from the floor up, move up, and then come back down. So that's my first tip for you is to offer 3 postures in each pose. Okay. So again, I'm just going to go through them really quick. You got your back, seated, tabletop, standing, balance, cool down or stretches, tabletop, seated, or supine. So that would be on your back, and then Savasana. Okay, so that's my first tip for you. The second tip I have for you as you're building your sequence and you're kind of needing to learn to lead through this is use your music as your guide to your flow. So when I hear this song, I know that it's time to start winding down the portion of this practice. So I usually have like a trigger song in my playlist. When I hear that, I know the next song is going to be my entry to cool down. So I need to kind of wrap up if we're doing balancing, or if I end up with a little extra and like before my cool down song comes on, then I'll say, hey, for the rest of the song, you guys just play, do whatever you want, get on the wall, get upside down, practice any of the poses that we did. You have about a minute and a half left. Just use that time to play. The third tip that I have for you is to run through your flow with your playlist and your content. Was a very beginner yoga teacher, and I still do this sometimes depending on what I'm teaching. I would go through my whole flow. I would build my playlist. I'm kind of like that girl that picks out her shoes first and then I build the whole outfit. That's how I am with like my playlist is like my thing. Like the songs that are speaking to me, I build my playlist and then I will then build the content and the things around it, right? So start your playlist. You've got like your entry song. It's usually going to be your instrumental song. And then it's going to pick up a little bit depending on, again, the type of class you're teaching, and go through it with your flow, right? So you're kind of like getting a feel for it yourself. The next tip that I have for you is video yourself cueing in portions of your flow and watch it back. And I want to say this with as much tenacity as I can. Be nice to yourself. Most of us, and myself included, I know I'm on a camera and I'm on a microphone a lot more now than I used to be, especially back when I was a beginner yoga teacher. We didn't do any of the things you see and hear me doing now. It can be kind of brutal to hear yourself back, but be kind to yourself and just objectively watch it and say, okay, I could have said this differently. But if you record it and then you take the class as if you're being taught by somebody else, it's like, okay, that didn't make sense, or let me try it this way. So video yourself cueing and the parts of your flow that maybe you're feeling a little stuck on, and watch it back. My next tip for you is less content is more in the beginning. You can speak more when they're not moving. So, like maybe child's pose or down dog or savasana, like those are your opportunities to kind of share the content, the message that maybe God has given you to share with them, especially in the beginning while you're still learning to cue, right? And use resting postures anytime you need to kind of get yourself back on track. That's a little sub point there. Like if you kind of get lost in your flow, then bring them down to child's pose. Nobody is going to complain about some extra time in child's pose. Get your head back on, check your notes, just check the time, do whatever you need to do, and then get back into your flow. So less content is more in the beginning. The next one is invite a friend or fellow yoga teacher and somebody maybe who will tell you the truth and say, hey, if I give you a 5-class pass, will you come and trade for feedback? Like, I really want to be a better yoga teacher. I'm learning, I'm still growing, and I know that you'll tell me the truth because you love me. So, will you come and then maybe even have like a couple of like questions for them to answer? So, like, how was the music? How was the flow? Did it flow? How was the sequence? How was the intensity? Like, whatever it is you might want to know, and then just send that to them via text and let them freely speak and know that it's not anything personal, but they are actively taking a part and helping you become a better leader and yoga teacher. And I promise this is valuable, even if it feels a little insecure. Like it can make you feel like, because we're already feeling a little vulnerable anyways, right? So invite a friend, give them some class passes. Hey, come for free and trade for feedback because I want to be better and I want you to help me be a part, or I want you to be a part of helping me be better. The next tip is write it out. You guys, there is no rule that you can't have a little notebook. And especially if you're teaching faith-based classes, put your notes in your Bible if you don't want them to be seen. But my students know, because even what are we at? Like 8-9 years later, if I show up with my little notebook, I'm holding it up for those of you watching the video. If I show up with my notebook, they know we're about to work. Okay. So like they know that I'm learning something new, and I will have my sequence built out, or at least the bulk of it, because I want to learn something and teach them something new. So write it out, use your notes as long as you need to. Okay. And there will come a time where you don't need them and you may be holding onto them like a little security blankie, and you might free yourself of those notes and trust what's there without them. But especially in the beginning or as you're learning new things, write it out. Keep it simple. You don't have to do all the poses that you know and all the transitions that you know. Just keep it simple. Because even if you have a strong personal practice, get your foundation built as a yoga leader. It's not the same. For those of you that are just starting to teach, you're like, amen. Like, I have a really strong practice, but like teaching people and watching for safety, and you've got, where am I at on the flow? You're keeping time. It's so different, right? So cueing, leading, encouraging, watching your students, and all the nerves while doing this, it just isn't the same as when you just practice yoga on your own. So use your notes, write it down, run through it, video it, all the things you've already talked about. Do that as long as you need to. And then once you feel like you don't need it, like let it go, right? The next tip I have for you is to repurpose the flow that you've created for a few weeks. You're like, hold on, that's going to be boring. No, it's only boring for those of us who are teaching the same flow. Like we're the ones doing it over and over, but likely your students either won't notice or they'll kind of like it. So I actually have a class that I teach. It's a private class, and their warm up and cool down is the same all the time. The only thing I change is like what's in the middle. and kind of like what we focus on, but their warm up. So the first 5 minutes and the last 10 minutes of class are always the same. And I do this for a couple of reasons. For one, it's predictable. They kind of know what to do and look for, but it's so they can also do it at home because of the type of class I'm teaching. I want them to be doing these things at home as well. And now they've just committed it to memory. But all I have to do is kind of think about what do I want them to do in the middle, right? So when you repurpose your flow, you can also add different playlists, change the scents in the room. So if you're going for a higher vibe, you can always add vinyasas if you want it to just be a little bit bigger, right? Like have the same flow for this month and then just change what you have around it, your content, maybe what you're speaking to them or the intention, the oils, the music, the if you have lights in your studio, change the color. I promise, like, likely they either won't notice or they'll kind of like it because they're like, oh, I know how to do this. We've done this, right? The next tip that I have for you is reps, 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 reps. This is the hands down number one way to build confidence. So if you're like, you just got out of yoga school and you're like, okay, now what? Find 5 people that love you and they don't care if you're good or bad that and say, will you guys let me like find people to let you teach to them, whether they pay you or not? Like just get some reps, teach your family, teach your kids, do donation classes. Is a great time to offer donation classes. Do it as much as you can. All the reps, not just at your house. Like I'm just trying, I mean, like in front of people that you are leading, you're watching them. How are they responding? And just teach as frequently as you can. This is, again, the best way to build confidence is by repetition. So, this also, I think, kind of takes that pressure off. Like, again, even if you're just doing donation based or free, it's a low risk environment because everybody just knows, like, hey, just say that. Hey, I'm a new teacher and I have to learn to teach, right? Do I have 5 or 10 friends that are willing to get together with me on Saturdays for the month of July and let me practice teaching to them? Again, most people will be like, heck yeah, especially if it's free or especially if it's donation based or whatever. So get those reps in however you can, whoever will let you teach. And as you develop as a yoga teacher, you'll kind of find what you like. I really love teaching this style. I really love teaching these types of people. I really love teaching kids or whatever it is, but just do it all. Like just kind of like, doctors, when they're doctors, they have to like be a resident and like go through all of the different types of being a doctor. And it's like, just assume, just kind of be like that. So let me go back through that. I hope these were helpful for you as you are maybe starting to teach or building some confidence in the way you lead your classes. I hope that something in here was like, okay, I can do that. I can do that. Even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels scary. Okay. So the first tip is when you're building your sequence, do 3 poses in each setting on their back, seated, tabletop, standing, balance, cool down and stretches, and then coming back to the mat and tabletop, seated, supine, and savasana. The second tip was to use your music as a guide to your flow. The third tip was run through your sequence with your playlist and content at home on your own. The next tip is to video yourself cueing and watch it back and be nice to yourself. The next tip is to remember that less content is more in the beginning. And next we're going to invite a friend or a fellow yoga teacher to provide us feedback after our classes. The 7th tip is to write it out and use your notes. The 8th tip is repurpose your flow for a few weeks with different playlists. And the last tip is you're going to teach, 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 teach. Reps, 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 reps. So which one of these or 2 of these or 9 of these was helpful for you? So if you'll take a second, shoot me an email. It's Kristen@christiansdoyoga.com and tell me which one of these stood out to you. Which one are you going to start implementing today? Do not wait until you feel brave enough to do it. Do not wait until you feel like you've practiced it so much that you can just do it with confidence. Like just start now because you are made for brave things, right? And all we have to do is when we feel that fear of like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. Like nobody knows how to do something until they start doing it. That's when we ask, hey, God, I need a little courage. Can you infuse me with supernatural courage? Will you let them see you and me, regardless of my output of the way that I'm leading while I'm learning, right? And you can lead while you learn. That is so doable. You can lead while you learn, learning while you're leading. Thank you so much for being here. It is such an honor and such a privilege to get to have these conversations and share just these little nuggets of things that I've learned along the way personally, that I've learned from mentors and teachers who have gone before me, and bring them to you to help you fast forward your journey and to kind of just have new ideas of things like, oh, I've never thought of that before. So, as always, we are so grateful that you chose to spend your time listening to this podcast. It's always helpful when you share this podcast with your friends, with maybe your groups of the other yoga teachers. That's how we continue to, one, get the word out about this podcast, but two, empower even more teachers with this content, this information. All right, friend. Well, we'll see you on the next episode. I hope to hear from you soon. Have a fantastic day.